Hello and welcome to this episode of The Rest is Entertainment with me, Marina Hyde.
And me, Richard Osman. Hi, Marina.
Hello, you're in Birmingham.
I am. I'm in Birmingham. I'm in the offices of Heart and Smooth and Magic. That's probably a different company. Anyway, I'm in some serious regional radio offices. And you're at the Goal Hanger, like the Goal Hanger HQ.
Oh, yeah, I'm at the mothership.
What's it like?
I'm gathering a large amount of intelligence with which I will, we can have a full debrief later.
I always assume it's very bunga like there.
Oh, yes, constant parties. I think, yes, yeah. I think it's very much like that. It's in a very big sort of working complex with all sorts of people. So I will, when I know more, so will you, Richard.
Is it like Tom Hanks's flat in Big?
Yeah. I mean, of course, there's, pinball machines and stuff. I've had to push them all out of shot because I just thought it lowered the tone.
Then there's one on trampoline.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just over there.
What are we talking about this week?
Well, I think we are going to talk about fake celebrity romances, showmances, although that term is disputed. We are also going to talk about publication of books. Your book is out this week, and I want to ask all sorts of things about what happens in publication week. A certain friend of the podcast, Lauren Sanchez, also has a children's book out this week, which
and that's the battle of the big guns, isn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe Sanchez finally.
Yeah. Bye.
I need to marry someone who owns Amazon.
Yeah, you had a good run.
And also, very excitingly, I finally have an excuse to talk about my favourite programme of all time, which is Nothing to Declare, the one about Australian Border Force. I shall tell you what that excuse is, but it's very interesting about the future of television. But it's essentially just going to be me talking about how much I love Nothing to Declare.
Can we please kick off with Showmances? This is off the back of the fact that a fake contract was leaked. I guess it's not even been leaked if it's not fake, but someone has put out into the world a fake contract suggesting that Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce's relationship is not real. It's just been a staged thing, and that it's going to have run its pre-planned course, and they're going to break up at the end of the month, and there's going to be some sort of notes app style apology, and that it's all been a PR stunt.
That would be too much for me. I'm too invested in that relationship.
It would be like for me hearing that you and Ingrid aren't actually together. That's it. I'm out.
Or Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez hearing if that was fake.
Well, that can't possibly, that would break reality. So, but first of all, we should say that showmance is a word. It's a little bit like when we discussed this before, staycation. It slightly means different things to different people. I think that it's in theatre, it used to mean like an affair you have with someone while the show's running. There was a Big Brother, US Big Brother. Someone said, oh, look, they're just having a showmance about two contestants right back in the sort of 2000s. But it's just sort of morphed into meaning, oh, right, this is one of those things that publicists have set up. First of all, I suppose we have to say, does this actually happen? And the answer is yes. This has obviously always happened. And if you go back to the golden age of the studios, the Hollywood studios, right back in silent films, they were always kind of creating these fake romances and saying, when they sort of owned stars, they were sort of contract players. And it was obviously a huge way of creating buzz. Because I think there was one film that Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney were in when they were very young, and it was made to seem as though they were having a romance. But it was most often used to kind of hide the sexuality of closeted gay actors and actresses right back in those days. So even Valentino went through, he was married to an actress called Jean Acker, and it was not
Whoa. Valentino and Jean Acker, that was for real, surely.
I'm so sorry. She locked him out of the room on the wedding night, and I think he was probably quite willing to be locked. So there's quite a few of these. It was this is where the lavender marriage term came from, and they were kind of, there were these magazines that were kind of dedicated to exposing these sort of affairs, and there was something like Confidential. Lots of people have seen the movie LA Confidential, which is an absolutely wonderful movie directed by Curtis Hanson, mostly written by him as well. And Danny DeVito plays the kind of grim little editor of a magazine called Hush Hush, which is the equivalent of Confidential magazine, which was always trying to kind of expose this seedy underbelly of LA. So there were many of these romances, but in this day and age, people sort of think all the time that things are staged. I have to say, okay, Taylor and Travis, I don't think for 1 second that is staged. It's so ridiculous. I do think that the reason that some people get into all these things is because it's sort of, first of all, it speaks to a kind of conspiracist mindset in general of our age. This is a great age of conspiracies, and people always want to think they can see behind the curtain. Because
that relationship is sort of perfect, isn't it? It's like America's sweetheart with America's golden boy.
Yeah,
and it seems convenient.
How many people could have staged it? Like the commissioner of the NFL, Roger Goodell, he might have staged it because it's got the ratings up. Her publicist might have staged it because she's got a tour on. There's all sorts of reasons why this may have happened. By the way, I think this is all complete nonsense, and it hasn't. That's not what's happened.
They just met and they fell in love.
Having said that, think of how much of her output is full of little Easter eggs, and people try and count things and think of all the significance of certain days and things like that. So we're used to thinking of Taylor Swift in this very kind of planned, breadcrumb following way.
Do you think all of her previous relationships have been on the level, or do you think she has been involved in a Showmance or Showmance at any point with any of the people that she's been linked to?
That's fascinating. I have to say that given what we know of her personality, and we know so much of her personality because she puts it out there, I think it's unlikely. She's got this amazing, her PR is this woman called Tree Payne, and she used to run the Christian and country section of Warner's Music. And I just don't think they do too much of it within that, I have to say. But she left Warner's in 2014 with one client, and Miss Taylor Swift, and she have to say she's done quite well for herself.
And Tree Payne is married to Denzel Washington, right?
Tree Payne is, yes, they live together. Yeah, no, so I think it's very unlikely. The trouble is, Travis Kelce has got a publicist called Jack Katosian, who unfortunately 5 years ago did go on some Australian podcast and say, oh yeah, these things happen all the time. And I myself have set up 2 showmances for the cameras. Yeah, I know. So he can hardly complain. Now he's saying, I'm going to sue. It's like, well, I mean, what reputation do you have to defend? But he said, I've orchestrated fake romances. You're doing it to kind of distract from sort of bad publicity, or maybe if someone's had a project that's flopped, it kind of draws the eye somewhere else.
It also multiplies fame a little bit, doesn't it? If you've got 2 people who are semi-famous and they are together, their fame multiplies by each other, and suddenly they are more than one famous person.
And people who understand those kind of people who sort of, I don't know, instinctively, reflexively understand what is required of them in public. I think at the 1991 Oscars, it is Madonna and Michael Jackson went together and they held hands.
No.
And everyone was like, oh,
and you're saying that's a fomance? Well,
yeah, I'm saying that. She claims actually, I think that she had a big glass of wine and then stuck her tongue in his mouth later.
Madonna and Michael Jackson.
Well, I mean, I think just, at the Vanity Fair Oscar party or something, who knows? Again, I think that was pretty performative. I have to say, certainly on his part.
I'd love it if she sued. Madonna said that was the absolute love of my life, Marina.
Yes.
How dare you?
I just feel like she probably wouldn't go there any longer. Just not even discuss the story. But really recently, a great podcast favorite, certainly a favorite of mine, Glenn Powell Sydney Sweeney, when they were publicizing Anyone But You, I think that she said to him, let's just have a pretend romance for the cameras. It's just funny. And then they said they both, which they did, there kept being all these sort of funny pictures of them in, I can't remember whether they were in Australia, they were wherever. And they sort of lent into it because I think she just thought it was funny. And then afterwards, he was very careful to say it had all been a game, but it was fine. It was her idea. And, but he lent into it for a while. And that he said, and I think she said, I mean, she is, as I say, someone who reflexively understands a certain type of publicity. She said, it's what the people want to see, so we gave it to them. Sometimes you've got to work hard to sell a movie. It's
kind of true, though, isn't it? It's listen, it's all playing the game. It's when, as you say, in the olden days, it was forced upon people a lot of the time. And for very uncomfortable reasons as well. You look at Elton John getting married and various things, and it was a sadder time. And now,
Rod Stewart sent a telegram to that wedding saying, "You may still be standing. We're all on the floor." Oh, Rod!
Well done, Rod. Listen,
they've got a hilarious relationship. Those two.
He called it out, to be fair. But these days a lot of it comes down to, listen. I mean, Taylor and Travis is a wonderful sort of world conquering relationship. But it most often happens now when someone comes out of Love Island or someone comes out of Big Brother and they're couples, and this is the kind of currency that they have. Once you come out of Love Island, you have to have something to get you in the paper, and a relationship is probably the easiest way to do that.
Absolutely, because it lasts. Then people are sort of still interested in you after the life of the show has ended. So it's a way of continuing it. There are people, mind you, though. I mean, obviously, for many years, people have talked about the different NDAs around Tom Cruise's relationship. That you need an NDA to go on the first date. That you knew that everything needs to be approved, and it was clear that Katie Holmes, his ex-wife, was in a very long relationship with Jamie Foxx for many years afterwards, but it was said and reported very widely that she was not supposed to date in public until after a certain time. And so all of that was kind of massive orchestrations with things like NDAs.
So NDAs are non-disclosure agreements. So that's something that you will sign if you've been shown a project or you dated somebody, or just a legal thing that says whatever happens in this room, whatever happens in this relationship, you are not allowed to talk about it on pain of being sued.
Yes, and this document is, within reason, a relatively new tool of the publicist trade, because it's certainly, to the degree that it has become so widespread, NDAs are used all the time now, but they're also used in business. I think New York Magazine did a cover story recently calling it the legal document of our time, because they have become something that was really quite a specialist thing. And of course, maybe, if you're Tom Cruise, you get someone to sign something like this if they become your housekeeper or whatever it is. But now the proliferation of these things across all levels, and that's everything from assistants to people who might one day deliver the flowers to everything. People are signing these things all the time. So there is huge orchestration of celebrities' lives, and it's not, and people know this, and so it's not beyond the realms for people to believe, oh, I'm being lied to all the time. I mean, celebrities are weird. You have to say celebrities are weird. Celebrities are people of whom a significant number could believe that, Beyonce faked an entire pregnancy. There are people who will actually believe that. There are many people, and there are people who will sit there all day and tell you things. You saw it to a different extent with Kate Middleton, the Princess of Wales, when she was out of the public eye. And the most outlandish conspiracy theories, people ran with them all the time, and people will say anything. So people believe at some level, and they are able to get into on a kind of feeding frenzy on social media, where they just do believe that they are seeing behind the curtain and that they understand. As I say, it's an age of NDAs, and it's an age of conspiracies.
There's also a weird middle ground, by the way. So as you say, these things used to be put together by the studios and by PRs and things like that. There is a weird middle ground now. If you are on a celebrity reality show or regular reality show, and there's two of you there, and you both sort of know it would be useful for you both to be in a relationship, and this would kind of multiply your brand and amplify it. But so you kind of go, well, let's give it a go anyway. And then you fall in love. Tommy Fury and Molly May, I bet they both kind of knew that this was monetizable, although I suspect then they did fall in love, and they had a child, and then it fell apart. So there's gradations of showmances and fomances, and some of them, it's a good rom-com. Two people who are forced together for publicity purposes who fall in love.
I think someone did a really bad version of it called The Arrangement.
That's what I was planning to do. I was planning to do a very bad version of it.
You can do the good version. Someone did a bad version of it. It was on something like E! Or something in America, and I remember seeing one episode. But I think you could do a really good version of it, because it's very, very interesting. As I say, the legal side of all of these things, just because there isn't a showmance or a fomance doesn't mean there aren't a million little legal documents protecting every side of this. So to some extent, all of these relationships are managed in ways that the public can't see, but suspect something, more is going on behind the scenes.
Well, in that wonderful book, Reach for the Stars, that Michael Cragg wrote about the boy bands and girl bands of the 90s and noughties, the amount of the opposite of this, of people who were in very loving relationships, and they weren't allowed to tell anybody. You had to keep that completely secret. We weren't allowed to date anybody. If you were in Five, or if you're in Bros, or any of that, you were not allowed to publicly be in a relationship with.
Well, that's like K-pop now.
Yes, K-pop, they're really not allowed to do anything.
Yeah, and you're incredibly managed, and you must be available to the fans.
Because Richie from Five, I think, was in a relationship with Billy, and they just went, you know what, we're both famous, we can deal with this, we can handle this. And the grief that Billy Piper got from fans, and it's that whole world is sort of a mess, isn't it?
Yeah, the casual death threats of the 12-year-old girls, as we've discussed before, the relentless onslaught of it is a lot to handle.
But at least they were analog in those days.
Yeah, at least it was just coming in the mail, whatever it was.
Yes, exactly, which is easier, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, depends what it is, doesn't it? But I think also people have that sort of distrust of the mainstream media, and they either think the media is in on this and is trying to engineer the idea of the story, or they've become, as we always say, they've become incredibly media literate. And for instance, when Tom Hiddleston and Taylor Swift were together,
this is what I was thinking about earlier when I asked you the leading question.
I mean, if that was fake, his agent allowed him to look like such a complete fool that I cannot believe, for that sole reason, cavorting in the sea wearing a T-shirt saying, "I love TS." I mean, do you want to be a Hollywood leading man or don't you? Because for as far as I'm concerned, you just got bumped down to character actor. So,
I think the M came off. It was "I love Test Match Special," I think was his T-shirt, and
would have been so much more butch outable, because I really that can't have been fake, because how could his agent possibly agree to that level of humiliation?
Oh well, you know what agents are like.
Not good ones. He must have a good one. I'm sure. I just want to say for the record, I'm sure Tom Hiddleston's got a super agent.
But listen, we know he's got an amazing agent. Now, here's the interesting thing. Okay, so we always think about these fomances and showmances and so on, and there's always speculation about famous people who date each other. But it comes about because so many famous people date each other. Now, why is that?
Well, it's their peer group. I mean, as they always say, no one else can understand the life I'm forced to lead.
Yeah, because celebrities often, there comes a point where they hang out with each other an awful lot rather than, say, they're friends from school. A lot of celebrities don't seem to have an awful lot of friends from school.
They've shed them all along the way, yes, and they kind of embrace the new world wholeheartedly. But also, there is a safety to dating non-civilians. Dating a civilian, they might end up going to the papers afterwards. They just might not understand the codes and mores of your new world, your new glittery world. And so you can see why it happens. But yes, I mean, sorry, to go back to that media literacy point, fans were starting to notice that the only pictures of Taylor Swift and Tom Hiddleston were all taken by the same agency, the paparazzi agency, and they were saying, "Well, how can they be so lucky? You normally get a couple of the big agencies will have pictures." Again, I do not think that was a showmance, but it's interesting that people have become so media literate that they're looking at the little bylines, the tiny little bylines in the corner of photos and trying to put it all together. And I do think that people feel like they're constantly trying to debunk kind of some mainstream media narrative, and they're never happier than when they're doing it.
Yes, I always think that someone who believes absolutely nothing, by and large, is more stupid than someone that believes absolutely everything.
Yes.
If that makes sense. And that describes a lot of our culture at the moment.
There is actually, if you want to go back to those golden years of Hollywood, there is a fantastic memoir by a guy called Scotty Bowers that is called Full Service. And he serviced in all senses so many of the stars of their times and their private peccadillos, the ones who were hiding their sexuality. There's a huge wealth of hilarious detail in there. Some people have said, it can't all be true, but he has got a lot of sort of documents and photos to back lots of things up. So that is an amazing memoir of that time and the kind of underbelly of all this stuff, where on the surface everyone is in these, wonderful, sweet little marriages and with two children. But the things that were happening behind the scenes, Scotty Bowers would love to tell you about.
It's fascinating when you watch back, like the Prost documentaries, and the answer they always give is, we don't have time for girlfriends. And you're like, okay, listen, I get it. You probably do have time. That's what, and then you look back at what they were actually up to.
They do have time, but if they haven't had one for a while, then all sorts of other things, other rumours start. And so they're in this constant, you can never please all, they're always trying to keep the widest possible fan base at all times. And so you can see that the strategy is always adapting. Sometimes it's good for them to be with someone, sometimes it's not. And those things change all the time. But no, I think Taylor Swift is probably, and Travis Kelce probably both doing okay without having to have a showmance.
So we think they're for real. We think that Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart, that's for real.
And by the way, that is the breaking of reality. If they're not together, I'm out of it. On that note, I think we'd better withdraw from the story, Richard.
Yes, good idea. So what might happen on a show like Love Island, where there are a lot of these, some romances, possibly some showmances?
Well, the whole point of the show is, you want to stay on by staying in some forms of romances, I suppose. So, but they will also pitch packages of the contestants to agents, because everyone's going to need an agent ideally when they come out of there, because a lot of people have done it for business. You will find lots of those couples are represented by, or not even couples, or they're represented by the same agencies, and they will be put together.
So they get pitched as a pair?
Yes, and the agent will wish to keep them on to going together afterwards, because the afterlife depends on us being interested in their relationship. And a huge part, as we talked about Tommy Fury and Molly May a couple of weeks ago, is relies on them staying together, and then we become interested in the soap opera, the program, as it were, of their relationship. So it makes business sense. All of these things make business sense. Every time any of these things ever happens, it's business sense. It was business sense in 1920s Hollywood because of prevailing attitudes, and it's business sense when they come out of Casa Amor. And, were Ekin-Su and Davide ever together? Who can say? I feel like I can.
Don't say that.
Here to break dreams.
Is anyone in this process harmed currently, if you know what I mean? Has everyone got their eyes wide open, or are there people being sort of broken by this, or are there people being broken by this process, do you think?
I want to say it's sort of victimless when you think of those kind of shows, because they're sort of going in to have a kind of public relationship anyway. I mean, it's the format. I would always be interested to hear the truth, which we never will, of the divorce of Katie Holmes and Tom Cruise. I will be always interested to hear that, because I think certain things have been so silent, so legally silenced. And of course, there's always different allegations about the involvement of the Church of Scientology in lots of these things that have happened with Tom Cruise, all of which he would say was complete nonsense, and that it's made him have a wonderful and happy life. But I would be interested to see within relationships like that what the actual truth of it all is. I think it's very different to if you enter Love Island, when, the show is what it says on the tin. Okay, we must go to a break, but after the break, we are going to be talking about publication week for your book, Richard. It's very exciting. I want to hear
and
everything
more importantly,
about
Lauren Sanchez's book.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, rather more importantly, but I didn't want to have to say it. Now, let's go to a break so we can get there all the sooner. This episode is brought to you by Sky, proud partners of The Rest is Entertainment, where you can watch unmissable shows, including The Penguin, starring Academy Award nominee Colin Farrell.
I know. Now, Colin Farrell was the Penguin in the Batman movie, and genuinely, you wouldn't have a clue it was him.
It really shows the magical power of makeup and prosthetics.
Incredible performance. Now, in this story, Gotham City is in ruin, in total chaos. The Penguin, aka Oscorp, is out to fill the power vacuum in the city and take control of its criminal underworld. Come on, man.
Not only does it star Colin Farrell, there is a return for Kristen Milioti.
Oh, I like her.
Yeah, she plays Sophia Falcone, the daughter of the Penguin's former boss. You might have seen Kristen in The Wolf of Wall Street.
Brilliant cast.
And great world building. Tense, violent, dark, always darker and grittier. The show looks like everything we got on The Batman, and then it kicks it up a notch.
Now, in this 8-part series, it goes deeper into the dark depths of Gotham's criminal underworld, and we'll get to see how it all plays out.
The Penguin, on Sky from the 20th of September. It is obviously a fateful day this Thursday, because Richard's new book, We Solve Murders, is out. And I would like to ask you about your publication week, and in fact, publication weeks in general, Richard.
Of course, we call them pub weeks, but that makes them sound much more fun than they are.
Yeah, it's the one place you're probably not going to go into. Yeah. Tell me what you've been doing and why you've been doing those things.
Well, there's two different things. I'll talk about the UK and then I'll talk about the US, because the different publication weeks, and I'm obviously able to do a lot more in the UK than I can do in the US. So it's interesting to compare and contrast. So in terms of, like, you do magazines and newspapers and stuff like that, that stuff you have to do a month ago or 2 months ago because of their lead times. But this is the week where I get to go on live stuff. So I'm going on the One Show on Wednesday.
You love the One Show for selling a book, don't you?
Oh my God.
What is it about the One Show that just you feel like it's the sweet spot?
Well, it's fascinating because I love stats and I love numbers, and there's people at Penguin Random House who can look at kind of sales figures the whole time, and they look at the spike after various different TV shows, and they can tell you exactly which TV shows are the most useful TV shows to go on. And the One Show is definitely one of them. It's just got a big audience and a very engaged audience, and an audience that buys books, and an audience that is interested in hearing about books. So I love going on the One Show. The key with all of those things, sometimes you see people go on those shows, authors, and they don't really talk about the book. and then there isn't a spike. You have to tell people how much you love the book. You have to, if you've got something you're proud of and that you think they'll like, you have to tell people about it.
I was going to say, do you have a real game plan when you go out there of talking points you want to hit, all of those things?
Not really. It genuinely all comes down to, are you proud of the book? And if you are, you're just letting people know that. So I'm never, obviously I've got an elevator pitch for the plot of the book and things like that, but I'm much happier if someone just throws a completely different question at me and you have fun. The big difference is if an interviewer has read your book and enjoyed your book, then it's a really, really great experience. And that's whether it's a local newspaper, whether it's the One Show, whatever it is. If they've read it and enjoyed it, then they will usually sell the book for you, and that's a really, really useful thing to do. So the One Show I'm doing this week, apart from that, I'm just doing radio. So I'm doing Zoe Ball, I'm doing Chris Evans, I'm doing global radio. And with those things, people always go, yeah, but people will get bored because, you're on Chris Evans and then you're on Zoe Ball and then you're doing, Heart Breakfast. And you think, no, but because no one listens to all of them.
I remember your mum saying to you, why did you tell that same anecdote that you told on TalkSport on something like Newsnight? And you were like, Mum, you're the only person who has listened to both of those.
No one is listening to both of them. I'm one of the few people who's as happy being booked on TalkSport as I am on the Today programme. I'm very happy with either of those. So,
well, that's unusual about you. I do think that's unusual because a lot of authors will say to you, oh my God, it's the worst because, I'm an introvert. I sit alone for most of the time. And then suddenly you've got to sort of emerge and be on the scene and talk to people and do however many interviews a day. And they find it really, really hard. I realise that you're not held back by this.
I always say I was on Saturday Kitchen and there was a chef and she had a cookbook out and she was like, I don't know how to sell it. There's going to be a point where they talk to me about the book and I feel too shy to sell it. And I said, well, are you proud of it? And she went, yeah, I'm incredibly proud of it. And I said, well, say that, because that's not arrogance. That's not saying you're going to love it. It's just saying, look, this is from my heart. I love it. I put it together with love and, people really, really respond to that. But you can do that without feeling like a fraud. You can never say my book is great because that's not your thing to say, but you can say I'm proud of a book or, stuff like that. And it's fascinating because I always, you can always look at the charts and if ever, like there's a cookbook at number 1 on the Amazon charts at the moment by Poppy O'Toole. On Sunday, the chart is always, the top 3 is always One Dish Bakes by somebody or other, and they've been on Saturday Kitchen. People are very responsive on TV shows to immediately going and buying things. So I'll do all of that stuff in this week, and then I've got Lorraine next week and various other things like that.
Can I ask you about reviews? Because by the way,
Yes.
The reviews for your book, every single one has been phenomenal and has said, he's done it again. This is amazing. I love this new series. Obviously, you must be always terrified that you're not terrified because you just realize it's coming. It's an inevitability that at some point someone's going to go, I'll tell you what, I'm just going to randomly give this a kicking. But do you think the reviews shift books?
That is a good question. Not really. No, I think word of mouth shifts books, and that's the only thing that shifts books. I think maybe in the case of We Solve Murders, because people have already read Thursday Murder Club and they're worried, oh, maybe this will be different. And you read a review that says, oh, look, you're in safe hands. It's it's the same old thing.
No, they haven't said that, by the way. They haven't actually said that, but they have said, don't worry, it's just as good.
But yeah, by and large, reviews don't. Reviews in magazines, and there's great reviewers like Nina Patel, who writes in lots of things, who people trust on books, and then that sort of thing is helpful. But broadsheet, not so much. Broadsheet can be very good for if you've got a slightly more obscure book from an independent press that people might not have heard of. It can suddenly take that from no one knowing it to it being at number 9 or number 8 in the chart, which can be the start of a really big thing. But by and large, no, it doesn't shift the dial particularly. No, one thing I am doing this week, which I would say to any author, because we'll talk about my American publication week, which is completely different, because that is me, there's no TV or anything like that. It's me just going to bookshops, and it's me talking to blogs and all the hard yard stuff, which I also love doing. But the one thing I'm doing this week that is a possibility for other authors is, and I've said it before, the biggest rated show on television almost every day is local news.
Yeah.
And if you are a local author in a local place and you have an interesting story and you have something to say about your book, or you've teamed up with a local charity or with a local bookstore, then always, always, always pitch your story to local news, because is huge. Local news is massive, and that's local radio and it's local television and all of that kind of stuff. And pitching it to those people, pitching it to local bookshops, that's the thing that really, really works. Go into wherever your local Waterstones is, even if you've got to get on a train to do it. Talk to them, because they'll talk to Central Waterstones, and you never know. You absolutely never know. It's which is what I do in America, is you just go, door to door, hand to hand, shop to shop, meet people, talk to people, put the book in their hand, and grow it organically. And that's as I say, in the UK, I'm immensely fortunate. So I'm aware that what I'm talking about is not something that's a debut author is able to do. So over here, I can talk about it as interestingly about what it means about television and what it means about which shows are popular. But in the other countries in the world, in Germany, America, stuff like that, I'm doing going from shop to shop to shop, chatting to everyone I can, signing whatever I can, talking to whoever I can, talking to every single blog there is, talking to every single podcast there is, saying yes to pretty much, or yeah to pretty much every opportunity. And that's how you break in a territory.
And we should say that publishers have fantastic people on the ground in all these places who sort of come and meet you often if you're in a far-flung place, and are really nice to you and take you to and take you between the different places, and really kind of, they're sort of local stringers almost, and they really kind of care for you, and they do the same for so many authors all the time.
If you're a debut author, the single most important people are the sales reps. Nobody else. Someone will say, "Oh, you should have let's have a launch party and we'll have champagne for your friends." Have a champagne for the sales reps.
Yeah.
They're the single most important people in that entire process, because they give it to the bookshops give it to people give it to their friends. That's the way you sell books. If you want to do I've never had a launch party ever in my life, because it's people who already know me.
Yeah.
I always say, anytime anything is ever suggested, I always say, how many books will it sell?
Yeah.
I'm so annoying. And so, I would never have a launch party. But I think what's interesting is, so my book is out this week, and people often ask, why are books out in certain weeks, and why do hardbacks come out at a certain time, and why do paperbacks come out at a certain time? Now, what we are in now is like, a sprint in the Tour de France, when everyone sort of just gets their place about a kilometre from the end. They all sort of get on the shoulder of the people they need to get on. And the entire publishing industry from the start of September is essentially jockeying for Christmas #1. And also jockeying essentially just for Christmas sales, which dwarf sales at any other time. Forget holiday sales, people going on summer holiday. Christmas sales is where every single pound is. And that's for authors, that's for publishers, that is for bookstores, that's for everybody. So my week, which is this week, my book is coming out. The Guinness World Records is coming out, which was Christmas #1.
Buy that every year for the children, every year.
And the idea of it is, you get your first week sales, which hopefully, if you're a known author, are big and people love what you do. But then also, as it gets towards Christmas, you've got all of those kind of the gifting stuff, and you just, there's just a lot more kind of publicity. Shops are putting more money into advertising things. It's a very big market. Books always come out on Thursdays, and they come out every 2 weeks. So all the big books will come. There'll be a fortnight. There'll be a gap in between where the big books won't come out, and that's purely because of the supermarkets. And the supermarkets change their stock every 2 weeks, and so the big books only come out every 2 weeks, which is a very weird thing. But you'll see if you ever look at the top 10 charts. Like last week, I think there were 5 new entries in the top 10. And it was all big people. It was all the Bob Mortimer book, Matt Haig, Kate Atkinson, all came out in the same week. This week, you'll see they will still all be in the top 10 because nothing big has come out to disrupt them. But then the week of sales that we're about to have, it's again, mine is out, Guinness World Records is out, Bella Mackey's new book is out, all sorts going on. The bigger books try to avoid each other. So if I come out on a certain week, so Sally Rooney's is out on the 24th. So people are trying to avoid me. People are trying to avoid Sally Rooney. Matt Haig bought his out a little bit earlier. Bob Mortimer bought his out a little bit earlier, the end of August. But Super Thursday, which this year is October the 10th, and this is a huge thing in publishing. There are 1,900 new releases bought out on Super Thursday, of which 450 are hardbacks.
Oh my God.
A lot of books, and a lot of sales for bookstores as well. And Ian Rankin is out on Super Thursday this year, and he's essentially had the #1 on Super Thursday, I think, for 3 of the last 4 years, Ian Rankin, quite rightly as well. Sophie Kinsella is out on that day. Kate Moss is out on that day. Boris Johnson's book is out on that day. He is out on Super Thursday. Boris Johnson Unleashed.
I already feel tired.
But that'll be interesting. So all the big hitters, essentially in every fortnight from here until roughly Christmas, this is where you're going to get your Christmas number one from. So say this week, 2 weeks ago, Bob Mortimer. This week, you got Guinness World Records. The 24th, you got Sally Rooney, Intermezzo, which will be a huge book.
Yeah.
And Jamie Oliver as well. And Jamie Oliver always used to be the biggest cookbook. Now it is not, for reasons we will get onto. October the 24th, you've got David Walliams against Jeff Kinney, the first time they've ever released books on the same day. That's the Diary of a Wimpy Kid guy, Jeff Kinney. And also Lee Child's new novel, written by Andrew Child, his brother. But Christmas number one. So November the 19th, there's 2 books coming out, which both are going to do very well. Pinch of Nom, which is the book that often gets Christmas number one. They always release very near Christmas because they think they'll get Christmas number one. And sometimes they do. But that's being released on the same day, November the 19th, the Cher's autobiography. That's going to be good, isn't it?
Yeah, now that I am looking forward to.
Yeah. And the big autobiographies this year, by the way, Cher, Alison Steadman, they've got high hopes for, and Al Pacino as well. So those are all the books that are in the market for that kind of huge Christmas time. It's all the hardbacks that come out. And hardbacks is where publishers really, really make their money because they cost more than paperbacks, just to put it bluntly. So it's the same book, but it doesn't cost an awful lot more to produce, but they make a lot more money. So everything is thrown at these 3 months. And the one thing I always find fascinating, so Waterstones, I think, is opening up at midnight for the Sally Rooney book. Right, there's sort of 10 different Waterstones are opening up, and you can queue up and you can buy it. And I thought before I was in the book industry that's oh my god, the publishers must be throwing a lot of money at that to get them to open up early. And the thing you really realise is the book market leading up to Christmas is so lucrative that the real battle is between the book chains. The real battle is between Waterstones, WH Smiths, and Tesco and Sainsbury's, and the independents. That's the thing. If you've got a book, if you think Sally Rooney's going to sell 200,000 hardbacks, for example, at 15 quid each, that's a lot of money. And Tesco want to be market leader there. Sainsbury's want to be market leader. Waterstones want to be. WH Smith want to be. Everybody wants as much of that market as they can get. And so often it is the chains themselves that are giving sort of buy one, get one free offers, that are knocking the price down, that are, adding, running prizes, or opening the stores at midnight. It's because they want as much of that money coming to them as possible.
Do you think you're quite unusual? And I think you are among lots of creators in also wishing to crack the business side of the code. That you're so interested in when how that, all the things you've just told me, all the nuts and bolts, all the behind the scenes things. Do you think that has it influenced a lot how you've gone about doing your books?
Yeah, I find it fascinating, and yeah. I'm never happier than when talking to retailers. Those are the people I love to talk to. I love to talk on the publishing side. I love to talk to the sales reps, and on the other side, I love to talk to retailers, and I love to talk to people who sell books for a living, because there isn't a business without that. So those are the people I love to talk to. For example, I always make sure this year that I've done a bonus chapter for independent bookshops. So if you go to an independent bookshop up and down the country, there are a special limited edition. There's a special limited edition We Solve Murders with a bonus chapter. I'll always try and do that. Waterstones have got one as well with a special edition as well. And I always love to do those things. And it's. Yeah, I find it fascinating. I do. I like to, as I say, I like the fact that over here I can do best practice and try and work out the absolute best way of doing things. And when I'm in America or Germany, that I'm much more down in the dirt, thinking, oh my god, how on earth do I sell books? And so I love having the two versions of the same thing. But the key thing is if you have a book, is booksellers and sales reps. I mean, that's everything, and every bit of publicity you can get, just get it into people's hands. And books really can start from nothing. And we've talked before about Colleen Hoover and Sarah J. Maas and all these people who've self-published. You really can build a multi-billion-dollar empire from nothing. It's one of the few industries where you can do that. But the key is relationships, and the key is people reading your book and liking your book. But sales is the main thing. Listen, I'm leaving aside creativity, which I assume you've taken care of yourself if you've written a book and you've got a great book that you're proud of. You've done that bit. And everything else is, how do I get as many people as possible to read this? But yeah, publication weeks are unusual times. But so this week I'm up against Lauren Sanchez, I believe.
Well, I was about to say, speaking of independent retailers, I'm about to not. Lauren Sanchez, the fiance of Jeff Bezos, has got her first book out this week. It is a children's book, Richard. Just as we have our
It's a good
elections,
idea.
we have our elections on Thursdays, and our books come out on Thursdays. They have their elections on Tuesdays, and their books come out on Tuesdays. Now, so on Tuesday this week, in the US, The Fly Who Flew to Space will hit the shelves, published by Simon & Schuster. Now, by the way, it's got a removable glow-in-the-dark poster. Has yours?
Do you know what? There's me being cocky, saying I tried to take a look at every angle. I do not have a glow-in-the-dark poster. I do have a fly that flies to space in my book, but then I always do.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So this is a picture book for the sort of children's market, obviously, which we'll have to do a separate thing on in the future for celebrity children's authors. But anyway, a fly who accidentally goes to space, and he learns about stuff like climate change, and which, as we know, is a great preoccupation of the Bezos Sanchez's, who
and flies
go everywhere by private jet and have their boat. We've talked about this before. Their yacht is so big that it has to have a support yacht trailing behind it with the helipad. The support yacht is 250 feet.
Wow.
Anyhow, so anyway, but she said it's a dream that's been a decade in the making. And I was just thinking, it's probably about 500 words. I mean, plus you're married to the guy who owns Amazon. I mean, why has it been a decade in the making? You're not that slow, are you?
No, that feels to me like that's not. I have nothing but respect for brilliant children's authors. I don't think that that's taken 10 years.
I've got nothing but respect for Lauren Sanchez, as you know, but I am worried on one front. Can I tell you something quite interesting?
Yes.
You know how when you write a book, when you publish a book, and all authors know this, and also you don't have to have published a book to know this, you'll always see a book. Amazon will almost have created a special category for you. They've come up with some sort of complete research. You say, oh, it's, number one in domestic science philosophy books, or, like number one in sort of crime thriller set in Hazelmere. And you'll think they've actually just sort of created this special thing. Can I tell you, The Fly Who Flew to Space is currently only 32 in children's bug and spider books. Like,
wow.
Lauren, do you not know anyone who knows something about the algorithm? Because
that's bad. It's only 17 in bug and spider books involving space.
Yeah. What's going on? Anyway, so at the moment, she seems to be having no help from her intended algorithm, but we'll have to see how that ends up. And we will definitely in the future talk a little bit about we'll talk a lot about the celebrity children's book market and how long those authors last and how much they write and don't write. I think I'm just going to assume that Lauren wrote the whole book.
Let's give her the benefit of a doubt. Although it takes quite an imagination to think of a fly. I would think of a fly. I would think a fly, well, that's just going to fly in the air. To go, no, wait a minute. What if it goes further than the air? I go, what do you mean, Lauren? What if it goes to space? Well, I'd be like, but it can't breathe.
Well, I'll tell you how she came upon this.
Oh, yeah.
Well, she was in her helicopter. She's actually described as journalist, pilot, and philanthropist.
Oh, wow.
My favorite hyphenate. She was once in her helicopter and she saw a little fly in and she thought, oh my gosh, this fly is flying.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, that's always the creative mind is being pushed to further extremes. And when Bezos went up into space, she thought, hang on, my fly in the children's book I haven't yet written should go to space.
Oh my God.
But she says it's also about inclusivity. I mean, what isn't?
Of course it is.
Of course it is. It's about STEM subjects.
Do you know what I would call a fly that goes to space?
What?
Buzz Aldrin.
What a trick has been missed. What a trick has been missed. Yeah,
well,
she's missed it.
Perhaps he owns the rights to Buzz.
Maybe he does. She says it's about all those things. We'll have to see how it does, but I'd really like to see it crawling slightly further up in that Amazon chart, flying up almost spacewards, because I think that number 32 in children's bug and spider books at this stage means that something has gone a bit tits up on the older publicity plan.
See, it's fascinating. One of my very favourite things about this podcast is we get to talk about books sometimes, and when we do, they go up the charts and you can see them go up the charts, and that's such a lovely thing to be able to do. This might be the first occasion ever where a book doesn't go up, because I can't imagine anyone listening to this and going, do you know what? I am actually going to unironically buy this.
At an independent bookshop on purpose.
Oh, that'd be nice, an independent bookshop. But genuinely, support your chains, support your local bookshops. If you can go and buy it in a bookshop, do so. I know not everyone lives near one, but if you can, because the pricing thing is interesting, because everyone's competing for market share. So Amazon will, for every book, have it at 50% of recommended retail for every book. Smiths will sometimes be able to do it if it's a book they really want market share for. Waterstones can occasionally get close to it. The indies can't, for a number of reasons. The terms of trade that they have, obviously the premises that they own, the fact that if you're WH Smiths, you can have a loss leader bringing people into the shop. If you're a bookshop, that's all you're selling. So the bookshops, I've said it before, they are not ripping you off. They're giving you that book as cheaply as they possibly can. And buying it, you're not just buying the book, you're also contributing to your high street, you're contributing to the smart people in your area, you're just contributing to the world. So if you can buy it in an indie, it's always worth it. There are ways online to buy from indies as well. But it's honestly, for me, it's an exciting week because I love this book. I'm proud of it. It's a new departure for me because it's a new story, and the reviews have been lovely. But I love the thing of talking to people about the book. I love the thing that I know in the next few weeks I can walk down the street and talk to people about the characters and all of that stuff.
It's nice, and I love the thought of you do always stop and talk to people about your books.
Yeah, I really do, and I love that. But also this week, Ben McIntyre's book, The Siege, is out about the Iranian embassy siege. Which I was fortunate enough, because he's with my publisher, I was fortunate enough to read it early, and it is brilliant as well. So listen, there's other books out there. And Christmas #1, by the way, I've mentioned pretty much all of the main runners, but if I'd done that last year, I'd have missed out on the actual Christmas #1, which we discussed, which was Murdle, which was the kind of Wordle quizzes, but for murder. So you never know, with all this stuff, all the planning in the world, all of these publishers who are putting all this money behind all of these books, all of the bookshops who are putting all their money behind this books, all this cleverly sort of avoiding each other, all this absolutely scientifically working out the right day to release something. Occasionally a book will just come along and blow everything out of the water, which is what Myrtle did. Who knows this year?
So what will you be doing in this week of publication?
Well, for me this week, there's TV and there's radio, talking about how proud I am of We Solve Murders. Then I've got the publication week in the US, which is very different, which is me going around bookstores and doing every blog going, and I'm getting my hands a lot dirtier. But in the UK, it's really trying to kind of maximize the exposure of the book. So Jamie Oliver, who's normally the biggest selling cookbook at Christmas, hasn't been for the last few years for reasons we'll get to in a moment. And so Pinch of Nom is out on the 19th, and they come out right just before Christmas to try and get that Christmas #1. And often they do. They certainly beat the Jamie Olivers of this world. I mean, Jamie Oliver's still selling a lot, but Pinch of Nom sells an insane amount of books.
Now, please, Richard, let's get on to the thing you actually really want to talk about, which is Nothing to Declare,
Nothing
Australia.
to Declare. Yeah, absolutely. Australian Border Control. It seems to have about 15 different titles. It's the show that if ever you're sort of going through the EPG and you come across it, you're like, oh, I'll watch 2 minutes of this, and like 3 hours later, you're still watching it. If you've not watched it, it follows the Border Patrol officers in various Australian airports. It's in Melbourne, it's in Brisbane, Sydney, and every episode is pretty much identical, I would say. It's almost always, because there's a lot of Southeast Asian travellers, it's almost always, every episode definitely has some Southeast Asian travellers being asked if they've packed any food in their suitcases. Them saying, no, we haven't packed any food. Ticking a box saying we haven't packed any food. And then the rest of the episode is customs officers unzipping a whole succession of suitcases, all of which contain carcasses of various animals and, eels in jars. And and them saying, but we said, is there no food? You go, oh no, this is just for me. But it's food. So there's always that. There's always someone who's come off a transatlantic flight, usually an American surfer, clearly off their mind on drugs, pretending they haven't taken any drugs.
With a trace of narcotic on their shoe occasionally.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a real type. I've seen that multiple times on that show.
A lot. They go straight to the lab, which is also at the airports, and they sort of drip something, and it turns blue for heroin. And yeah, there's always, although sometimes someone's completely absolutely out of their mind on something, and they find absolutely nothing, and they just send them on their way. They're just a character.
Oh, actually, there's the American who gets sent back. I often see those. You've got a criminal record, so you're sent back. You can't come to Australia.
Yeah, they sort of come to visit a relative, and they say, "Well, what's the name of your relative?" And they put them in a room, and then they ring the relative, saying, "Mate, we've got John here. He says that he's marrying your daughter." And Joe said, "Yes, he's coming. Only thing is, mate, he's got 7 convictions for murder, and he hasn't declared them. And he's got a lot of food in his luggage as well." And then they get sent back. There's people who come over with the wrong work papers, and it's fascinating. Well, firstly, it's fascinating that it's so addictive. It just happens to be. And I've always thought, oh, is that just me? Is it just me that loves this show? And last week, Sky released their really, really first ever detailed drill down into the viewing figures of every single show on the Sky platforms. And the top 5 will not surprise you. Game of Thrones, of course, is number 1. The Walking Dead is there. That's number 5. The Sopranos and The Simpsons are in the top 5. But number two, beating The Sopranos, beating The Simpsons, beating The Walking Dead, 15 million hours of viewing. It is Nothing to Declare. Isn't that incredible? When there's a million shows, a million kind of, Blues and Twos type shows out there, a million precinct shows out there, Nothing to Declare is a show that's absolutely captured the imagination of people. I mentioned it on Twitter the other day, and the amount of people saying, that's my favorite show, that's my kids' favorite show. There's something extraordinary about that program. You've seen it, right?
I've seen it many times. I've seen far too much of it. My kids find it fascinating. It's we should say it's made by the 7 network in Australia, but it's what they call them. They call them obsdocs, but that's called a blue light. Obdocs. That's a blue light obdoc, which is things like, stories about paramedics or anything in a custody suite or anything like that. But I have to say there's a sort of perfect marriage sometimes between idea and country. And Australians, it's really interesting. Australia is a place of many rules, which is strange because they've got a national self-image as a sort of like, a larrikin culture and what have you. We also have a national some people have a national image as the Englishman abroad as sort of David Niven type. And in fact, it's just like lots of stag parties that throw up in other people's capital cities. So just like
David Niven used to do.
Yeah, just like probably David Niven used to do. No, he had a dazzling war. Now listen, but there are a lot of rules, and Australia is mega strict about its biosecurity, and it's like a real national sort of obsession. And they really, because they've had in all sorts of things introduced, invasive species or whatever, that cause massive damage to their ecosystem. So they're really hot on it. And there's just something so perfect about how they do it. They apparently, when you're in Sydney Airport, they put these signs up saying, they're filming today, do approach someone if you don't want to be filmed. You sort of have to opt out because there's so many people going through an airport. You can't get everyone to sign the release form for the sort of background stuff. But it always amazes me that people have agreed to be on.
Yeah.
As they're unpacking their eels and their, various lab specimens. But there's something about it that is completely, you sort of know what's going to happen. You know that something's going to do wrong. It also does give you access. And one of the sort of controversies about these sort of things is that these type of shows is that they're made with the, you have to be blessed by the Australian Border Force and Immigration Department in order to get access to the custody suites and the sort of, those sort of back rooms and control towers and all the places that you'll see on the show. So certain people will sort of say to you, oh, this is security theatre. Security theatre was, have you heard of that phrase? It's one of those things that
I like it,
people talked about it a lot after 9/11, and they would say all this stuff they make you do, like give your tweezers out and give all the, this is rubbish. Actually, scanners are really easy to defeat. All the sort of stuff that, patting down children. This is security theatre. It doesn't make anyone safer. A lot of people believe a show like this to be, in a sort of weird way, a kind of part of the, I don't think soft power is quite the right phrase, but a part of the sort of outreach of those government departments. And there's something slightly, even though it's on its 17th series and is obviously globally massively popular. And I think they have to have a certain amount of, Australian TV is also, you have to have a certain amount of Australian programming on it. So this really fulfills this for Channel 7. Yeah, you have to have a certain amount. But it's been exported everywhere. I've watched quite a bit of the Canadian one where you'll get like the great thing about Canada is that it's next to America. So every episode you can absolutely be guaranteed that someone is going to say, oh, what, these guns? We're not allowed them here, are we? Sorry, they've just driven over the border with a bunch of guns. The Australian one for me is of a different quality. Yeah. I think and as I said, sometimes there's just the perfect marriage between country and format. And
it is that fact that, so listen, it's of course there's lots of different stories on that, but there are a lot of stories that are the same. Like when we used to watch Airline in the UK, and every episode you were thinking, please let there be someone who's turned up 45 minutes before their flight and is told they can't go through, even though the flight hasn't taken off yet. And they go, yeah, but my flight hasn't taken off yet. Yeah, but you have to be here 45 minutes beforehand. Every single episode you'd have it. And there's something like watching endless reruns of Friends, just something very, very soothing and comforting that you know what you're going to get. But the interesting thing about all of this is I absolutely love that show. These shows are not being made anymore. Nothing to Declare is still being made because it's a legacy hit. But these types of shows have been completely squeezed out worldwide. So we still have the very high budget things and we still have the very low budget things. Nothing to Declare sits in the middle.
Is it not low budget? It feels, sorry.
No, because it's
low budget.
It's obdocky, there's a lot of editing goes on, it shoots out in the wild, it's real people, it's lawyers involved. There's a lot that goes into it. Listen, it's not costing the same as Star Wars, but equally, it's costing more than pointless. There's money spent on this. There's a brilliant article by Manori Ravindran in the Ankler this week talking about how this type of show, these kind of lifestyle shows, the shows that the Come Dine With Me's, the Nothing to Declares, these shows that run and run forever and populate every single platform you can find are no longer being commissioned, because channels just no longer have the money to do it. So they have the money to do a few big things, and then everything else has to be filler now. It has to be super, super cheap filler. And these things, if you go on iPlayer or ITVX or All 4, any of those things, and try and find a gentle lifestyle show, try and find Escape to the Country or Pointless on the BBC iPlayer, you will not find it. You'll find the big, buzzy, showy things. The same with any of these platforms. So Clarkson's Farm you'll see on Amazon all day long, but you won't see hours and hours and hours of these smaller shows, and people are not commissioning them anymore. Distributors are having to, because distributors who are the people who take programs from program makers and sell them around the world. This is all they want. They want, if you've got a show that can kind of, do 100 hours, they want it, but no one is commissioning them anymore. No one's commissioning farming shows and lifestyle shows and antique shows and these gentle things that we've got used to over the years on British TV.
It takes time, doesn't it, to build up the characters because we talked about going back to Airline and Airport in 1996, which was the first sort of thing where I heard people talking about a docu-soap.
Yes.
Because you become so invested with these people who sort of strangely, like that Jeremy Spake, became a personality. He was an Aeroflot, he worked on the desk of Aeroflot. But those kind of things that play take narrative conventions to reality they take time to build up. They take time to build the characters. But as you say, if you get one that works, there's another one, Australia, again, you like to see the same thing happen a lot of times. Yeah. Bondi Rescue. Seen that one?
Yeah, okay. I have not.
Why have you swum out there? Sorry, please explain to me, if you can't basically swim, why it's just people humans making stupid mistakes, the same stupid mistakes again and again.
Highway Patrol New Zealand is another absolute classic. But yeah, these shows are not being made because they don't make financial sense for the channel themselves. So if you're ITV, if you're Channel 4, if you're 7, they don't really make sense for you. They make sense for distributors, but you're not a distributor by and large. And so distributors have now started making these shows themselves, and you can pitch directly to a distributor. A distributor will go to a channel and say, you take this show for free. We own all the rights, and the fact that it's on a Channel 4 means that we can sell it around the world, and that's where we're going to make our money, which is a completely different business plan than TV's ever had before. But that's very nascent. But this middle, the squeezed middle, these shows that actually are our wallpaper and the stuff that we love, that's the stuff that is going to completely disappear. And distributors sort of doing the odd one here and there is not going to fill the gap that we've had over the years. And that's no one's fault. It's just it doesn't make economic sense to make those shows. But I think it's a real shame
for a distributor that they could sell around the world. That would be, because you always hear stories. It's just I remember someone I saw saying, I just went to look at a flat in Delhi. I was just looking around, and the guy who was showing me the flat said to me, they couldn't stop laughing because they just wanted to talk about Brexit. They just found the whole thing of the fact you've done the Brexit then, have you? And we're laughing so much. We should have a documentary of people British people trying to do things and being told they can't do it because of Brexit. And that would sell all over the world. And people just watching them get caught up in their own red tape. that would be the perfect marriage, I think, of country and format. And I think people would find that very, very watchable, because you know what's going to happen. Someone's going to have the wrong thing in their suitcase, or in this case, someone's going to be told they can't do something because of Brexit. And although it could be said in one of the government departments where you just say, no, that's not really possible anymore. I'm so sorry.
Voiceover by Jamie Theakston.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's happening in other things as well. There's the big new game show in the States is called Lucky 13, presented by Shaquille O'Neal. And that is entirely funded by third parties. It's not funded by the broadcaster at all. So it's been given to the broadcaster. They said to the broadcaster, look, we've got this format. It's got Shaq. It's got, big prize money. And of course, the broadcaster is saying, yeah, we'll take that. And they try and make their money back on the distribution. So this is going to be a model we see far more. But this idea that, the place in the suns and the come dine with me's and the escape to the countries and the nothing to declares, there's not going to be another generation of them. If you're the BBC, you're still going to fund the ones that are on at the moment, if you're Channel 4 as well. But there is not going to be, and so you see this all over TV at the moment, quizzes, all sorts of things. It's the legacy stuff that they're recommissioning. It's the stuff where they go, well, look, we're making it anyway. We've absolutely pared it to the bone in terms of, the budget and all that kind of stuff. And we already know the money that it brings in. But no one's launching this stuff anymore. But hopefully this idea of distributors being pitched to directly and selling things directly, hopefully that might salvage this industry. But how lovely to be able to speak about Nothing to Declare. Honestly, and if you haven't seen it, just listen. It doesn't matter what season you start on. You haven't missed anything.
Yeah.
It's the same each time. But there's a new series being shot at the moment. We haven't got it yet over in the UK, but it's done. It's done and dusted. It's in the can. But we know what's going to happen on it, don't we?
Yeah, we do know what's going to happen. Those three characters will be present. Those three character types will be present in episode 1. Now, listen, do keep sending in your questions to therestisentertainment@gmail.com, and we will answer lots of them in Thursday's edition. See you on Thursday.